The text arrived just after lunch, while I was helping a regular customer pick out a handbag at my boutique. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with Tiffany. I've emptied our joint account. Good luck. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just cold, cruel words from Eric, my husband of 12 years. My hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't crack. I smiled at the customer and wrapped her purchase in our signature silver tissue, tied it with a soft gold ribbon, and thanked her like nothing had happened. But inside, a storm was already moving into place. My name is Rachel. I'm 38 years old. And while Eric may have thought he'd shocked me into silence, the truth was far more complicated. I had seen this coming for months. Long before the late-night meetings, the gym obsession, the sudden interest in cologne and tailored shirts. I noticed the way he started locking his phone, how his smiles no longer reached his eyes, and how our joint credit card began to show expensive dinners for two during nights he claimed to be working late. 3 months ago, I opened a private bank account. Quietly. Carefully. A week later, when he suggested merging all our savings to simplify things, I agreed with a smile while discreetly draining my personal funds into that new account. I kept just enough in our joint one to avoid suspicion. 2 months' worth of steady deposits. He thought he had cleaned me out. What he didn't know was that I had already documented every suspicious transaction for the past year. I had receipts, had dates, had screenshots, and I had a lawyer. My phone buzzed again. Don't bother begging. Tiffany and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. I didn't respond. I simply locked the shop early, turned the sign to closed, and called my attorney. It's time, I said. Her reply came sharp and calm. The papers are ready. Shall I serve him in Miami? Smiled. Let him think he's won. For now. The next message came minutes later. I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger. At least your little shop can keep you busy. My little shop. The boutique I built from scratch. The business that earned more in a quarter than Eric's stagnant mid-level management salary brought in all year. And unlike his finances, mine were clean, separate, and entirely in my name. He didn't know I had refused to add him to the deed of our home, inherited from my grandmother. Despite years of him pushing. Another decision he thought was selfish at the time. Another decision that would save me now. I poured a glass of wine and pulled out the thick folder I had kept hidden in my closet. Records, emails, photos, every detail he thought I was too distracted to catch. In it, I also slipped the latest message. By the way, I used our joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift. Oh, perfect. I picked up the phone and called the credit card company. I'd like to report fraudulent charges and remove an authorized user, I said. 2 first-class flights to Miami and hotel bookings at the Royal Palm. I have text messages admitting to the fraud. The representative's voice shifted from formal to firm. We'll take care of it immediately. Tomorrow morning, Eric and Tiffany would arrive at the airport to find their tickets worthless. Their hotel room gone. His dream escape. Cancelled. And that was only the beginning. That night I stayed in our house. My house. The same warm space Eric had once called home, now silent but calm. He'd always hated how I kept it decorated with my grandmother's antiques, calling it old-fashioned. I called it mine, and legally it was. He had tried several times to get his name on the deed. I always changed the subject. Now I was thankful I had. While the rest of the city fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table, sorting paperwork. My lawyer would need everything ready for the filing. Receipts, bank transfers, dated records. I glanced at our wedding album, then closed it with a sigh. The man in those pictures no longer existed. That version of Eric had disappeared under too tight shirts and ego boosts from someone who laughed too easily at his jokes. My phone buzzed again. You'll be fine, Rachel. Maybe you'll find someone your own age. I've told my family. They understand. We just grew apart. It's nobody's fault. Nobody's fault. I added his text to the growing digital folder I was building for court. My lawyer would appreciate this version of the truth. Eric admitting to leaving, to draining the account, to mocking my age with that smug confidence of someone who thinks they're invincible. His arrogance was documenting itself. He thought I was hurting, that I'd spend the night in tears, wine in hand, staring at our old photos. Instead, I reviewed business spreadsheets for the boutique, updated a shipment schedule, and rechecked insurance coverage. I was building a fortress brick by brick, and he hadn't even noticed. The next morning came with a flurry of angry buzzes on my phone. The first one hit before 7 a.m. "What the hell did you do to the credit card?" Then another. "The airline won't let us check in. Our tickets are invalid. Fix this now." Smiled. The cancellation confirmation from the hotel had arrived in my inbox an hour earlier. Their beachfront suite was officially no longer reserved. I silenced the phone and opened the boutique. Fridays were always busy. Boxes of new designer handbags had arrived. The morning sunlight streamed through the front windows, warming the fresh displays. I adjusted a mannequin scarf and turned on soft jazz. Everything in my store was mine. Earned. Protected. Unreachable by him. Around lunchtime the calls changed tone. This time it was Susan, Eric's mother. "Rachel," she began, voice clipped. "Eric told us everything. He says you're being cold and unreasonable. That you've sabotaged his travel plans and frozen the accounts. Honestly, dear, isn't that going too far?" I put her on speaker while restocking a shelf. "Did he mention draining our joint account?" I asked, calm and steady. "Well, he said you pushed him to it. That he was desperate. Would you like me to read you the text where he laughs about it?" Silence. "He also said," I continued, "that my shop is just a little hobby, and that I should be grateful he's moving on." Another pause. Softer now. "He did sound a little cruel. I told him that text message was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, Susan. But my lawyer advised minimal contact with his family during proceedings. Goodbye." Blick. I returned to my work, the boutique buzzing with customers and soft music. That afternoon Heather, Eric's sister, texted through a mutual friend. Word was already spreading. Apparently, Eric and Tiffany were stuck at a budget motel near the airport. Their glamorous Miami escape had turned into two angry people in a beige room with no minibar and a broken air conditioner. Eric had tried to use his personal credit cards. Most were maxed out. Another red flag I'd quietly noted during our last 6 months together. My lawyer called in the evening. "Emergency hearing is scheduled for Monday," she said. "Given the text messages and your documentation, we're in a strong position to freeze all remaining shared assets." "Has he been served yet?" "Not yet. But we'll use the motel address." "Perfect." As I hung up, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Eric. "You think you're smart, but I made copies of all your boutique records. Half of that business is mine." I laughed, then forwarded the text to my lawyer. "Let him try. Let him dig deeper. Sometimes the best revenge is letting someone believe they're winning, right before they realize they've already lost." Monday arrived with the sharp chill of early spring, the kind of morning that felt like it demanded reckoning. I wore a navy suit and tied my hair back, not for him, not for anyone else, but because I wanted to walk into that courtroom as the woman I had always been, focused, composed, and unbreakable. Eric arrived late. He waltzed into the courthouse like it was a networking event, wearing a designer blazer that didn't quite fit and jeans too tight for his age. His walk had a forced swagger, but it evaporated the moment he spotted me and my lawyer already seated, already prepared. Tiffany wasn't with him. I imagined the motel lighting had finally revealed the truth. Romance fades fast when paired with stress, cancelled plans, and the reality of splitting fast food and maxed-out cards. The hearing began quickly. My lawyer opened with methodical precision. She presented the text messages. Eric's brag about draining the joint account. His taunts about my age. His admission of using our shared credit card for a vacation with another woman. Each screenshot appeared on the screen, one after another, framed by the judge's growing frown. Eric's lawyer, clearly hired in haste, attempted to shift the narrative. "My client acted out of frustration, Your Honor. Mrs. Langley's actions have been calculated, even vindictive. Calculated, my lawyer replied. Prudent. My client documented her husband's financial misconduct, protected her business, and followed the law. We presented the deed to the house, solely in my name, inherited from my grandmother. We showed the boutique's incorporation papers, signed and dated before the marriage. We proved every expense was from my personal funds, carefully separated from Eric's income. The judge turned to Eric. Mr. Langley, he said, voice cold and clipped. You admit to emptying a joint account and using shared finances to fund a trip with your girlfriend? Eric shifted in his chair. I was trying to make a clean break. The judge arched an eyebrow. By committing financial fraud. Silence. Eric's lawyer jumped in, desperate. Your Honor, we believe my client is entitled to part of the business. It grew during the marriage, and surely. My lawyer cut in. The business existed before the marriage. It was never commingled with shared finances. And I have 12 years of accounting to prove it. Eric's face began to sink. The judge leaned back in his chair. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct. All joint assets are to be frozen. Mr. Langley is ordered to return any funds removed within 24 hours. But the money's gone, Eric blurted. We spent it on. Then I suggest, the judge interrupted, you find a way to replace it. Case adjourned. As I stood to leave, Eric's expression morphed from confusion to disbelief. He looked like a man watching the sand fall faster in the hourglass than he'd ever expected. Outside the courtroom, I passed Tiffany in the hallway. She avoided my eyes. She looked thinner, paler. She clutched her phone like a shield, scrolling rapidly, pretending I didn't exist. As I walked away, the sound of my heels echoed down the marble corridor. That sound, strong, steady, clean, was louder than any words he'd spoken. The man who had laughed as he left me had just been handed a reality check. And this was only the beginning of his unraveling. The days following the hearing unfolded like a slow collapse. Only it wasn't mine. It was Eric's. The man who once strutted around with undeserved confidence now found himself cornered by the very freedom he had chased. His calls became frantic. His texts erratic. Each message swung wildly between threats, guilt trips, and empty pleas. You've ruined everything. You'll regret being so vindictive. We can fix this. The boutique would be nothing without me. I didn't respond. I simply forwarded every message to my lawyer. Each word added weight to the growing wall between us. Let him spiral. Let him drown in the mess he made. I heard from Heather through mutual friends. Tiffany had kicked Eric out of her apartment after just 3 weeks. Reality had set in. The man who promised beachside cocktails and endless adventure had instead delivered legal debt, frozen assets, and constant complaints. She had posted cryptic quotes online about toxic people and learning from mistakes before quietly removing all traces of him from her social media. Meanwhile, I expanded. The boutique thrived, ironically bolstered by whispers of the divorce. Women came in, some just to show quiet support, others to share their own stories of betrayal and rebuilding. One woman bought 3 handbags she didn't need. Just to remind myself that I'm allowed to win, she said. Even Susan, Eric's mother, called again. This time her voice held something different, regret. He said you were cold, she murmured. That you never supported his dreams. But I saw the messages. The way he mocked your age. The way he gloated about taking your money. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I raised him better than that. He listened. But I said nothing. Their apologies, though sincere, came too late to matter. The motel stay hadn't lasted long. Eric had moved back in with his parents. 45 years old and sleeping in the same bedroom he had as a teenager. The same room he once dreamed of escaping. Now, it was the only place left that would take him. The irony wasn't lost on me. My lawyer filed the final settlement motion. Eric had tried to challenge it again, claiming he had helped emotionally support the boutique, that his presence during my long work nights somehow entitled him to a share of my profits. The judge reviewed his claims, then turned them down with one line. "Support isn't ownership." I framed that quote and hung it behind my desk. Melissa, my assistant, chuckled when she saw it. "He really thought emotional laziness counted as investment." Smiled. He thought a lot of things. Orders continued to grow. The online store gained traction, reaching customers across the country. A local business magazine featured my story, not as a divorce tale, but as a case study in smart business, preparation, and resilience. They titled the piece, "From Betrayal to Empire." The accompanying photo showed me standing in front of the boutique, confident and composed. Nothing about me screamed revenge. But everything about the image whispered victory. Eric was never mentioned. He didn't need to be. He had wanted me broken, dependent, desperate. Instead, I became something else entirely. Untouchable. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I opened the second location of my boutique. The space had once been a faded flower shop, tucked between a bakery and an old bookstore. Now it gleamed with fresh paint, polished wood floors, and rows of curated displays. Customers walked in and gasped. Some recognized the name from the magazine feature. Others came out of curiosity. All of them stayed. The launch night was packed. Glasses clinked, cameras flashed, and I stood in the center of it all, not as a woman abandoned, but as a businesswoman on the rise. I heard whispers about Eric's new life. He had tried dating again, but his reputation preceded him. Women his age weren't interested in a man with no savings, no home, and a long trail of drama. Younger women had learned from Tiffany's mistake. His social media was a mess. Half desperation, half denial. He posted motivational quotes between complaints about the system. His new job, a contract position with half the pay of his old one. Heather visited the boutique one afternoon. She moved quietly, a little hesitant, running her fingers across a silk scarf before speaking. "He told us you were controlling," she said. "That you belittled his ideas, crushed his dreams. But watching him now, I'm ashamed we believed him. You never had to say a word." His actions said everything. I nodded, offering her a tea without speaking. I had no desire for gloating. Only peace. Susan called again, her voice weary. "We tried to help him. He still blames everyone." "Tiffany." "A judge." "He refuses to see himself." I let her talk. I understood she wasn't looking for a solution, just a way to be heard. I had spent too many years doing the same. Now I understood the difference between listening and carrying. My days were full. Inventory orders, team meetings, interviews with press. Young women emailed me for advice on starting their own ventures. I always told them the truth. Protect your business like you'd protect your name. Trust your instincts. And never, ever hand over the keys to someone who doesn't respect your worth. I framed one more thing in my office. A screenshot of Eric's first message. Asterisk, have fun with your little shop. Asterisk below it, I added a brass plaque. Now employing 22 women across 2 cities. 1 year after the divorce, I hosted a community event at the original boutique. The space had expanded, the walls painted anew, but the foundation was the same. Women mingled, sipped drinks, laughed, and swapped stories. Near the end of the evening, someone tapped my shoulder. It was Tiffany. She looked older but softer. A different kind of tired. She held a small gift bag, hesitant. "I owe you an apology," she said. "I believed everything he told me. That you were cold, demanding. But after living with him I saw it. He had no plan. Just complaints. Just expectations." I raised an eyebrow. "And now, I started my own consulting business. Small but real. And it's mine." She paused, then added, "You inspired that. Watching you rebuild. Not with rage but with grace. I learned more from watching you walk away than from anything he ever promised." I accepted her words. Not with a hug, not with tears. Just with a quiet nod. After she left, I walked through the boutique, touching each display like a heartbeat. This was more than survival. This was transformation. Eric had tried to write the ending of my story with a single text message. But that was never his power to hold. The story was mine. And I was still writing it. One chapter, one boutique, one bold decision at a time. 2 years after Eric's text message tried to dismantle my world, I stood on stage beneath soft lights at a national women's business conference. The topic wasn't betrayal. It wasn't revenge. It was resilience. The crowd wasn't there for gossip. They were there for growth. And as I spoke about protecting your assets, trusting your gut, and never apologizing for boundaries, I felt a quiet power take root deeper than applause. A woman raised her hand during the Q&A. My husband says I'm being paranoid for keeping my business separate. That marriage means sharing everything. Smiled. My ex-husband said the same. Right up until he tried to claim half of it in court. Protection isn't paranoia. It's preparation. The audience murmured with understanding. After the event, I returned to my office at the flagship boutique, now one of 5. The original framed screenshot still hung by my desk, the infamous message. Asterisk, have fun with your little shop. Asterisk beneath it, a second frame had been added recently. A photo from our 5th store's ribbon cutting, surrounded by a smiling team of women from all walks of life. Melissa, my first assistant turned regional manager, entered the room with a delivery. The new signage came in, she said, placing the box on my desk. Also a card. I opened the envelope. It was from Susan. Just a simple message. Asterisk, thank you for showing my family what accountability looks like. You raised the bar when we thought lowering expectations was enough. We're still learning. Asterisk. I sat back in my chair, letting the words settle. Eric, from what I last heard, was still trying to salvage his life. After the divorce settlement, he had moved into a rental apartment above a garage owned by a cousin. His attempts at dating fizzled. His work record remained blemished. He never recovered from the realization that the woman he had dismissed had outplanned, outlasted, and outgrown him. But this wasn't about him anymore. My business had become a haven, for customers, for my staff, and for the women who followed our journey online. We were no longer just selling handbags and clothing. We were selling proof that dignity survives destruction, that you can lose everything and still rise, that quiet preparation beats loud betrayal every time. At our 5-year anniversary celebration, we hosted a private dinner in the boutique's courtyard. The tables were lit by fairy lights. The air smelled of lavender and champagne, and every guest present had been part of my story in some way. Friends, partners, team members who had stayed through every phase. As the evening wound down, I stood for a toast. I used to think revenge meant winning louder, I began. Now I know it means building stronger. Eric thought he ended my story with a text message. But all he did was hand me the pen. Glasses clinked. Laughter sparkled like light on crystal. The boutique wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to the women who believed in it, who came to shop not just for fashion but for the feeling of stepping into a space where strength had been stitched into every corner. And as I locked up that night, lights dimmed, street quiet, I looked once more at the framed words that began it all. Have fun with your little shop. And I whispered to myself, I did. Then I walked away, heels steady on the pavement, head held high, ready for the next chapter that no one else would write but me.